So the other day I was plowing my driveway, and as I was backing up, or going forward for that matter, I heard this horrible scraping sound it sounded like. And I thought my brakes were dragging. So the weather warmed up a little bit, I decided to take the plow off. And I had a valve here to, yep, didn't want to do that. Had a Schrader valve mounted inside the front fender here, where it was really easy to get to air up the air shocks for when I mount the plow. So as I'm taking the plow off, and I'm trying to actually take air out of this valve and lower the front end, and all of a sudden this snapped off. So I was like, well, I got to fix that. Well, you can't find those without buying this whole kit, which has T's and airlines and everything. So I did order that. I don't have it with me today. It's going to come in about Friday. But after this thing snapped and I drove the Jeep again, the terrible sound was gone. So I'm thinking that what may have happened is I may have had a pinhole leak in this Schrader valve that was making a noise as the air was getting forced out of it, that from inside the cab it sounded like it was metal scraping on metal. But nonetheless, the task for today is check the brakes and make sure that there was nothing wrong with those. But if you saw my last video, I drew some lines on the floor to help line up the car as you're bringing it into the lift. And I had my son with me. He was driving the car and I was directing him. And I found that when I tell him to go left, he cranks the wheel hard left when all he needs to do is move it like an inch. So we were talking about putting a mirror up on the wall so that you could see the lines that I had drawn on the floor. And I've put them in chalk today because I came up with a better idea, kind of by accident, than doing a mirror on the wall. Mirror on the wall. So I happened to be at Costco and they had a wireless rear view mirror camera. And I thought, boy, I'd like to have that in my Jeep because I have it in one of my other cars and I kind of like it. So as I'm driving home after I bought it, I realized that the license plate, which is where this camera is on the license plate holder, because there's a battery in here, rechargeable, lithium ion. So I wasn't going to do what I wanted to do because the camera would be mounted on the left side of the vehicle instead of the center, so that would make it difficult to deal with. So I decided, how else can I use this? And one of the things was lining up the plow, but I couldn't have it on the Jeep and do it because you couldn't see the place where it connects under the Jeep. But what I did is I mounted it on the actual plow with some magnets, which I have on that frame right there. And I just centered the plow that way. And it was actually the easiest I've centered the plow ever. So I got to thinking, can I use that so that whenever I'm trying to pull a car onto the lift into the bay, can I use that? And you're seeing the display, by the way. Can I use that to line up the car with only one person in it? And all you have to do with this thing once it's plugged into your cigarette lighter is wave your hand in front of it and it turns on the camera. So I'm thinking that by putting that, and I've got it temporarily mounted on that pair of folding steps, if I can see the tires and how they're lining up to those guidelines, maybe I can do this by myself, which typically I've had to pull it in and kind of hang out the door or get out and look at where the tires were. So we're going to give that a try. So I'm in the Jeep now. I've got that up on the dashboard. I'm going to try to watch it, drive, and hold the camera all at the same time, which might be a little difficult. I marked those lines a little bit better in chalk this morning to make them a little bit easier to see. I'm thinking that I may have to put paint there and line them up that way. Turned off on me, it does that automatically. So you can see I'm getting the chalk on the tires. Looks like they're pretty much centered, and as I get up to the 2x4, that's my stopping point for the Jeep. So let's get out and see how we did. Okay, so this tire, we look like we're about up to the first tread line. I'm matching this line right here, this tread line. And we're maybe an inch off, so I think that's close enough. I have to try painting the lines. I was going to do that anyways, just so that they wouldn't wear off as easily. And maybe that'll be a little bit easier to see because I can make them a little wider. But for now, I think I'm close enough that I can position the... here's how we're doing on the back. I can position the lifts. And the back's fairly close. I think I can get the lift pads under there at this point and raise the Jeep up. So a couple things appear to have happened. Number one, when I pulled the Jeep up to the 2x4 and then I tried to put the rear lift arms underneath it, they were hitting the tire even fully retracted. So I just put the Jeep in neutral. I actually pushed in the clutch and pushed back a little bit with my foot without the engine running, and I heard the squeak that I heard the other day. So I'm back to thinking that I do have an issue with the brakes. So since I had to move that back for the arm to clear the tire, I actually made a new marking for the Jeep on the floor for where to put my 2x4 to let me know where to stop. So I'm going to raise it up. I'm going to take the wheels off. I'm going to start with the back because I just think that's where it is, but I'm going to check all four. And I'm not going to bore you with, lifting the car and taking off the wheels and things such as that. I will just update if there is anything worth updating, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, so we've got the Jeep up on the lift, and this is the driver's side front tire. Passenger side front tire. Passenger side rear tire, but that's not where the noise is. The noise appears to be coming out of here, because if you get up under here, you can tell that that's the direction it's coming from. So I'm going to take that wheel off first, and we'll see what we have. So here's what I found. These brake pads are pretty well worn, and actually, oops, well, there it was. It was on the first one. That wear indicator, that is actually the first one that has actually worked for me. I don't know, I pretty much stay on top of my repairs and checking out my brakes. Maybe I just always have changed them before I got down that far, but this one actually worked. I'm a little bit surprised. I'm also a little bit surprised that this is the second time in 30,000 miles, a little over 30,000 miles, that I'm replacing these brakes. So it's time to get out my handy dandy tool to push back the piston in the caliper. These make it nice and easy. I'm going to have to get the tripod for the camera for this operation because I can't do it one-handed. It never fails, the battery runs out in the middle of it. But if I recall where I was showing you that I am able to crank this piston back in. And it takes a little bit of effort, but it's not that great. And you get that pushed back. Then when it comes time to put the new brake shoes in, or brake pads are in, which are a lot thicker than the worn ones, then you have the room to get that on. Some people take off the caliper and the caliper mounting bracket together and try to do this all in one. It's only 2 bolts to take them off, so I take them off. And I guess there's a side benefit to that. When you take them off every time you do the job, there's less rust in the bolts. Are easier to take off. You're not fighting a bunch of corrosion over the years. But I didn't video that on this side. If you need to see that, I will video it on the other side, just so that you can see it. I used a 13 millimeter wrench to take the caliper off, and an 18 millimeter wrench to take off the caliper mounting bracket. So I got to use my brand new Husky ratcheting wrenches that I got at Home Depot, and they work just fine. was a little concerned that I wasn't going to have enough strength at my advanced age to take off the caliper mounting bolts, but I guess I put them back on, so I should probably be able to take them off. So I'm off to the other side to take off the other side. See you over there. So if you've got aluminum wheels, you probably run into this problem. Can't get it off. I've loosened all the lug nuts. 4 of them are off. 1 is on here just to retain this. And I struggled with these things till I saw a guy at a tire store do this. I don't remember who it was or where it was, but it's important to keep that last lug nut on there to catch the tire when you hit it. Otherwise, you don't want that thing falling, especially from a lift, and you know it's going to bounce quite a bit. But that's a quick and easy way to get off a stuck wheel. Little force. If you've been following my channel, you've seen the repurposing of my drywall hoist. The piece that holds the drywall is a big frame here. Happens to be about the size of a 1/2-inch pipe. So I just took a 1/2-inch pipe and I made a frame here to hold my tires. Because those things go about 50-some pounds, and I'm not as young as I used to be. I still can handle them, but I wanted to invent this thing before I really needed it so that I was sure that it would work. And you just saw how easy it was to take that off. I've got a frame here out of pipe. These prevent it from falling off. It's got a nice big stable base because it's made for handling drywall, and that's heavy and big and bulky. So it'll hold up to about 150 pounds. I just made that frame out of pieces of black pipe, and I have to say, it works pretty good. So now we're going to take a look at what we got to do to take off the caliper and caliper bracket. Set this camera up over here. Basically, the caliper is held on with 2 bolts, and then the bracket's held on with 2 bolts. And like I said, I used the ratcheting wrenches I got at Home Depot. Just make sure you're turning them in the correct direction. Okay, so those are broken loose. They'll come out easy. You'd have trouble getting this off of here if you don't relieve the pressure from the brakes. So a big screwdriver, whatever you have that'll fit, you just need to get in there and push that piston back a little bit. And that's probably enough for it to come out. Right there. So these bolts can come off. And what I've been doing is I've always liked to try to keep my bolts together, so I have plastic jar for the driver's side, a plastic jar for the passenger side, and I just put on all the nuts and bolts for that side. You know, a more complicated job, especially one that I'm going to leave apart for a long time, like when I do a resto mod, I guess I'd call it, on the Corvette. I catalog them. I write down what's in that container, but then I keep a sheet of paper that says the nuts and bolts for the brakes are on the shelf, third shelf towards the right in the barn. So there's the caliper. Now the brake pads are still attached to this. That's the caliper mounting bracket. And there's two 18mm bolts on there. Those are tighter than the other side. I might have to get the breaker bar. I don't want to overstrain the ratcheting wrenches, because, you know, there's teeth in there. They could possibly break off, so I'm going to get something more substantial to take that off with. Those were a little bit tough. It was hard to get a socket in there because of the clearance. What I found that it was, though, that this had a little play in it. I could move it back a little bit, get the socket in there. So I've got them broken loose with the ratchet. And now I'll be able to use the ratcheting wrench, because I'm not trying to break them loose. The ratcheting wrench fits in there much better. Makes it much quicker. Once you got that socket in there, you couldn't get a swing at it. Kind of like these ratcheting wrenches. Like I said, they've got a fine tooth. A little bit concerned about putting too much stress on the teeth in there. But once you've got it broken loose, you get a nice swing at it that sometimes you can't get with a ratchet. There was a bolt, the bolt that holds this stabilizer link on would have interfered with the ratchet, and I wouldn't have been able to get that long of a swing. So there's your caliper bracket. These are just pressure fit in with little tabs. I should use a real hammer. Actually, I'll take it over near the bench. All I'm going to be doing here is taking a hammer and tapping these out. This side isn't quite as worn as the other side was. And this one is really nowhere near as worn. So it must not be sliding very well in the channels here. Now there's little clips in here that need to be pried out. They should come the new brakes should come with a new set of these. But when I put these back on, what I'll do is I'll take a wire wheel and I'll clean this out in here. Then I'll put some brake grease behind there and on the tabs so that they slide better. And should last longer the next time. So here's the brake pad on the front passenger side. I would imagine that when you're inspecting it, this cut here, which doesn't go all the way into the backing of the brake pad, that's probably your wear indicator that you need to replace it when you don't see that cut anymore. And as you can see, both sides of this, I mean, that's about 3/8 of an inch of brake pad on there. Didn't measure it, but the front driver's side is excellent. The next thing I'm going to do while I'm thinking about it is I'm going to measure for airbag springs to support the front end whenever I have the plow on. And what I have to do is I have to measure from this base here to this bumper here for height, and then I have to measure from the inside of the spring. Let's go here. The inside of the spring here to the inside of the spring here for the width so that I can order the proper size. I may or may not do that. It depends. I've had trouble with these shocks that I have on here leaking down very quickly, and if I had a pinhole in that fitting that broke, maybe I'll keep those and I won't do the airbags. But if they continue to leak down, then I'm pretty certain that what I'm going to end up doing is just trying these airbags in here that they're from a company called Airlift, and they, if your car isn't listed, they say you can measure these two dimensions and then look it up in a table and order the correct one. The other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is see if there's a way that I might want to run the air hose to those, because I would end up probably doing like I did for the other one, putting a Schrader valve here, a valve stem if you will, up there somewhere I can get to it pretty easily. I've tried to check these air shocks before at the fittings, and they seemed to be okay. I sprayed soapy water on them, but I don't know what's going on with them. I guess maybe the way we'd have to go with the airline is come out through the top of the spring and go around here and then go out to the bumper or fender. Looks really short on this side to run that, so I guess what I'd do is run it out to the front like that on the other side and run it across and tee it off so that they both pump up at the same time. But I will take those measurements and write them down so that I can order it. Maybe that'll be another video that I'll be doing. Yesterday when I measured for the airbags for the springs, I think I got the two videos that Airlift had on their website confused. When you're measuring for the airbags, they said to unload the vehicle and then measure so that it's at its normal ride. And then on their install video, they said jack up the body and unload the spring. So I think I've got the measurement wrong on the airbags, and I'm going to have to measure again once this is on the ground and been moved so that the suspension settles in. Then I'll get back down on the ground and measure the airbags again. The inside diameter is probably not going to change, but I'll measure it anyways. So I don't know where I'll edit this into the video, or if I can edit out the part I did yesterday, but I will somehow make it understandable so that you get the measurements right if you decide to do that. So I know that there's a valve on top of the airbag. I measured this 7 inches, 7¼ maybe by 4, and there is a valve on top of that airbag. So I'd probably have to have it a little shorter than that. And then what I did find is that I can run that up inside the spring here, come out here, put a T here, and you notice I have my extension, or my measuring tape. I stuck it through from the other side, so I know that I can run the air hose from the other side through this piece of the frame. It's a reinforcement, but it's completely hollow, and I can get my air hose over there, you know, by running it the same way from the other side, you know, from the spring to here and through. And then I can mount it up here on the bumper or fender and put an air valve there. Sounds like it might be a plan if I can't get the air shocks to stop leaking. It's kind of bothersome that they leak down and you have to pump them up every time you want to use them. I don't know, maybe it's leaking out of the shock itself, but it's done that since they were new, so we'll get that valve, try it on there, maybe do a little experimenting by there's a T up here. If I take that T off, I can isolate one side of the shocks to the other and see if one leaks down and one doesn't. So I can do some troubleshooting before I jump to the conclusion that I need to buy the bags for the springs. So I happened to notice that there was a hole in the bottom of this bumper here. So I took a piece of wire and shoved it up there, and sure enough, it comes out at the top. So there's a way that I can route my airline right down through that bumper, and if I need to, I can cut that hole a little bit bigger. I don't know if I would need to, but if I do, I can. So it looks like the airbags are a possibility of being installed on the front of this to help hold that plow up. That's something I'm going to have to think about. I'll just show you what this, I just wanted to show you what this rack looked like for taking the tires on and off. It's, as I said, I'm going to go over and lift it up. It's simply a little piece of pipe, an elbow, a longer piece of pipe, down to a T, a couple elbows, makes the cradle for the tire. So I've already taken that tire loose. 4 of the lug nuts are off. One is, and I hit it with the sledgehammer to break the wheel free. So I'm just going to go over here. And you how the wheel hoist works. Now I can reach behind here and take off the last lug nut. See up just a little bit more. And there you have it. Easily take off the wheel. Hardly any physical labor, so as I get older, I'll be able to handle that. I can still lift them now, but who knows? And both of these brake pads are just as good as the other side, so we don't need brakes in the front, just in the back. So, since that's the case, let's put the wheel back on. Okay, it's a little low for some reason, so I just can crank it up a little bit. Push it on. Start one of the lug nuts, make sure I get several threads on. Release the lock here that will prevent me from going down all the way. Then to release the hoist, you have to crank it a little bit and take the pressure off of this lever. Hold that up while you crank it down. Let it crank down, I guess, is the better way to describe it, because it'll come down all by itself if you let it go. Now that that's done, I'm going to take my other 4 lug nuts, install them. And hit them with the impact wrench. Of course, when I get it back on the ground, I will torque all of the wheels because I had them all off. But for now, I had this planned this way. I'm going to wait till my wife comes home from work. And when she comes home from work, she's going to take me over to the parts store. Because other than my Corvettes, this is my only vehicle to go get parts. I don't want to take the Corvettes out yet because it hasn't rained enough to wash the salt off the roads from the winter. That's about a wrap for today. I'll get the parts this evening. We'll go out to dinner. And tomorrow when she goes to work, I'll put it back together. I'm going to take the rotor off, and I like to use the back end of a hammer, the handle of it, inside the place where the caliper and that's set, because it gives you a place to hit it. As long as you keep turning the drum while you're taking it off, it won't get cockeyed. I like to take them off even if I'm not going to replace them, just because it makes it easier to take it off the next time, and I can put some brake cleaner on. And the other thing I can do is I can put some grease on this fitting or on this hub here so that it doesn't rust onto it. Because if they get rusted on, It's usually right there, and they can be a bear to get off. So I'm just going to clean off those emergency or parking brake mechanisms. With some brake cleaner. And I'll do the same with the rotor, inside of the rotor, to make sure that everything's as clean as it can be when we put it back together. Looks like I need another can of brake cleaner. One thing you want to make sure before you put the caliper brackets back on is that these pins slide easily, and these do. I've taken them out and I can see that they're well lubricated, so I'm not going to put any more lube on them. But you want to make sure that those are well lubricated. The next thing is put some brake grease in these slots here. I cleaned them out with a wire wheel as best I could. Put some brake grease in there before you put in the hardware that holds the shoes or the pads. So these clips have one end that's longer than the other. The long end has to go towards the outside of the car so that when the pads get forced in, this can't slide as easily. They just get pushed in like that. There's 4 of them on each bracket. I'll push those in better with a screwdriver or something now. Make sure they're all the way in. You can see the grease squirting out from them. So I am getting it a little further down in there. And I just noticed that these two are different. This one's on the wrong side. So there is a left hand and right hand to each of those. As you can see, the little tab fits on the outside of that. And the straight up one goes on the inside because otherwise it would hold that up too high. So now for the other side. Now we can put 2 of the pads in. The pad with the sensor goes in the wear sensor goes in on the inside of the caliper. And now after we put them out a little further so that there's room to slip over the rotor, we'll be ready to install them. Trying not to get the grease on the inside of the pads. That looks to be pretty good. So as I told you, I'm going to put a little bit of this grease around this hub so that it doesn't freeze on there, doesn't rust on. It's pretty thick grease. It's not going to melt and go anywhere. If it does go anywhere, it'll go in between the flange here on the hub and the rotor. Put the rotor back on. Now it's time for the caliper bracket. Oops, should have got the bolts out before I did that. I don't want to do that sit there. That little thing bolted on because it could fall. Don't want that to happen. Uh-oh. That's not good. I got a little bit of that grease on the rotor. It did not touch the pads, but I'm going to have to wipe that off and hit it with some more brake cleaner. What happened was a little bit of that grease that I put behind those clips squeezed out, and I bumped the rotor with it as I was putting it on. So, clean that up. Now we'll put it on. Now that it's all clean. Should have brought my cart over here with all the tools in it. Okay, I'll push those pads up against the rotor. They slide nice and smooth. So bag was blown away in the wind. Had to make sure that there wasn't any small parts in it that I needed. Okay, now the last thing is putting the caliper on. And what I'm going to do is lube up the places on that caliper where it hits the pads. So that is basically the two fingers over here and the piston. Helps if you push the guide pins in a little bit. And then the two caliper retaining bolts. And one thing that's really, really important here is when you get in the car, make sure you pump the brakes up so that you close that piston, you know, on that those pads. Otherwise, when you back up, you will not have brakes. And that's not a good thing. Let's face it, having brakes is why I'm doing this job. So, except for mounting the tire, this side's done. Getting a little smarter this time on the other side. I'm not going to show you everything, but I am going to show you anything that I do differently. First of all, after I'm putting these clips in to keep from getting any grease on the rotor, I'm going to clean off the insides of those the business end of them to make sure there's no grease that's able to get on the rotor. Now I'm going to go put the pads in. So sometimes I learn. I actually have the bolts for the caliper bracket in my hand so that when I put it on I don't have to take it off and go back and find them. And I've got my cart nearby so that when I get these started I can actually just reach around and get a wrench. Squeeze the pads in. This ratcheting wrench gives me a much bigger swing than I could ever hope to get with a ratchet and a socket, because there's all kinds of stuff in the way that limits your swing with the socket, but not with this. And I already double checked, if you will, that the pistons slide freely and the guides there and everything on this side as well as the other. Pins in. I've lined up, had to push the ends of the guide pins in so that it would line up. Otherwise you can't get the caliper over them. Okay, I've had this happen to me once before now. It appears that the thing is tight, but the pin is rotating, so it's not really tight. I have to get a wrench to hold that. And that's nice. The wrench is too thick this way to fit in there where I need to get. So I guess I'm going to have to try to hold it with something like a pair of needle nose pliers. I don't know why designers design things that the typical wrench won't fit on. So, see, it doesn't take much to hold it. I'm not even hardly gripping that at all with the pliers. Just enough to keep it from turning. So we're good and tight. And other than putting on the tire, torquing all the wheels, because yesterday I took the front ones off and I just put them on with the impact wrench. What was taking me so long is I was having trouble getting the wheels of this handy dandy wheel hoist that I invented past the lift, and I have a trailer sitting over there. I didn't have enough room. Okay, pretty much need to line up the axle with what I've got here, because I moved it. That makes a difference. And it's on. Just put the lug nuts on and tighten them up. Put the other wheel on. Put down on the ground. Torque all the wheels. Then pump up the brakes so that when I back it out of the garage, I do have brakes. So that's it for this one.